Jeannette Rankin was born in 1880 in Missoula, Montana, on a ranch just outside of the city.
She was the oldest of 7 children.
She went to the University of Montana and got a degree in biology.
In her early years, she had been a social worker. That's how she began her career.
She actually worked in an orphanage in Seattle, and she realized that doing the work on the ground in the orphanage was a good thing, but it wasn't going to fix the problem. And she realized that public policy was the way to make something change. And that's when she really had the vision that she should run for office, to do something on a national level to fix the problems.
When I think of Jeannette Rankin, I think of courage, because courage is what it took for her to step out of the stereotype of a 19th century woman at her time and really break down the barriers.
When she was campaigning in Montana to establish the women's right to vote in Montana, she would specifically go to high schools and talk to high school students. And she would say to them, I want you to go home tonight and ask your fathers why your mothers can't vote. The students did that, and I'm sure the fathers were stuttering and stumbling and couldn't really come up with a good reason, because of course women got the vote in Montana due to Jeannette's efforts as a campaigner.
It was the turn of the century, and women had no rights, really. And no one thought that women should have rights at that point in time. So it was a very radical notion that a woman should have the vote. And Jeannette was very helpful in Washington, the state of Washington, to get the vote passed, to give women the vote. And that inspired her to come back to her home state of Montana to work on suffrage here in Montana. Jeannette Rankin was the first woman elected to Congress in 1916. She took her seat in 1917 and advanced legislation for women to get the vote, the 19th Amendment. And she is the only woman to vote on giving women the vote.
In 1916, when only 12 of the 48 states even permitted women to vote, Jeannette Rankin of Montana became the first woman member of the United States Congress.
But we felt that if having a woman in Congress would make it very difficult for the men in Congress to vote against women's suffrage.
What she was saying is, you're not going to have a complete society, and you'll never be to your fullest potential if you don't include women.
People who are change agents often are alone in their journey, in a way, in that internal isolation, right? Because in Congress, where she's the only woman in a Congress that was full of these bravado men who just didn't see a woman's voice mattering at all. And here she was overcoming all of that to get elected by people who saw her.
The beauty of it is she didn't give up. It was like, okay, I'm here, not going anywhere. You all gonna have to deal with it.
There's a number of people in the population for whom she's not popular, particularly because of her vote against entry into World War I and into World War II.
That created a great uproar. And of course, they insisted that I was in tears. I had shed all the tears I could shed long before the vote came.
I think she was a complex personality. There wasn't a simple Jeannette Rankin. She was someone who had really dedicated her life to helping other people.
So after Jeannette finished her first term in Congress, She was invited by the Georgia Peace Society to come to Georgia and help build the Peace Society there. So she moved to Georgia, and she stayed there from 1920 till she passed away in 1973.
She loved visiting her neighbors and having her neighbors visit her. She became a member of that community. Not a former representative who was high and mighty. She was involved in that community.
She had lots of loving relationships with people. There were so many people in Georgia who knew her and loved her.
I imagine what she went through, and she stood the test of time. She made people understand how important it was to empower women.
She was such a pioneer, and I'm so grateful for her hard work and her example, her toughness, her resilience, standing up for what she believed in, and especially for women and children.
Women can be such a galvanizing force in society for positive representation, and also preserving our democracy, and really also just demonstrating what it means to be inclusive, to give equity regardless of gender and race and ethnicity. So I think of her, when I think of Jeannette Rankin, I think of all those dynamics and how relevant it is to what we're experiencing today.
Jeannette Rankin was engaged her whole life in the political sphere and advocating for social justice, racial justice, and gender equity. She did the Rankin Brigade in 1968, and in the late 60s, early 70s, shortly before she passed away in 1973, she considered another run for Congress. And ultimately that did not happen, but that shows you how engaged she was her whole life. The foundation started with a bequest from Jeannette Rankin's Georgia homestead. She wanted to help, quote, mature unemployed women workers, unquote. And so the 5 wonderful women that started this organization thought a way to do that would be through a scholarship foundation. And we gave our first scholarship in 1976. And the foundation and the scholar grants are carrying on her legacy.